Agro is struggling a bit with vocal strain, so I'm going to be stepping in for a little bit. Fall of the Nerlal Collective by Majestic Teach 6677. Grand Admiral Kachal looked at the data mournfully. The invasion by the Nerlal Collective had been devastating and brutal. While they had survived their initial assault, all 3 colony worlds were decimated with high casualties among both the military and civilians. The final assessment just came in, he said slowly. Our forces lost 3 vessels for every one we disabled or destroyed from the collective. Our total military is down to a mere 25% of original strength, and it will take us at least 2 full cycles to rebuild. Unfortunately, reports indicate it will be less than a tenth of a cycle before the collective returns to finish what they started. He pulled up a projection and, after looking at the numbers, concluded that 2 full cycles to rebuild was likely an overly hopeful estimate, not a realistic one. Even with every civilian actively supporting a war effort, the gap was just too large to overcome. We don't have the technology or numbers to overcome this push, Kachal said sadly. Without help, we will be doomed to subjugation by the Nerlal Collective. It won't be slavery, just a so-called protectorate as they have done before. Slavery with a kind name is slavery nonetheless, and diplomacy has failed as our systems are too remote and lack sufficient valuable resources to attract aid from an ally of any significance, High Chancellor Chainka responded bitterly. I have one thought, but you won't like it, Kachal said quickly. Oh, and what might? No, just no, don't even say it, Chainka implored the Admiral. The humans. Kachal didn't say it, but simply shrugged apologetically. How can you even think to suggest that after the diplomatic incidents? Chainka exploded at Kachal. We couldn't even get through one meeting without them attempting to... I know, Kachal interrupted quickly, and that's exactly why I think they might be our answer. Despite our problems with them, humans have a reputation for fair and honest dealings and a rather significant distaste for bullies like the Nerlal Collective. But they're halfway across the galaxy. Why would they come to our aid? Chainka asked. We have children who need parents, Kachal explained. Humans are known to adopt from outside their species, and we have too many orphans for our own people to handle. I believe if we teach our children to be more attuned with humans, their adoptions will bring attention to our plight. Class, please recite the Prophet Marin's third law of trade, Instructor Merrick said firmly. Know your target so you may best exploit them. But remember, the best exploitation leads to mutual benefit, 12 young voices recited in unison. Now we hope to place you all with human parents, Merrick began, as he flicked on the hollow presentation. If you are to live among them, you need to understand the relationship between humans and semi-sapient animals they keep as pets. In today's lesson, we will be covering how cats and dogs demand attention from their human guardians, and the similarities to the Mandarin family grooming. Wait, what? Captain Malkovich blurted out. Yes, an inspection, the squid-like being confirmed, while holding out their credentials for Galactic Child Protective Services. I understand there was an incident at the adoption center, and I am obligated by galactic law to ensure these refugees of war will be appropriately cared for, provided access to healthy environments and adequate educational opportunities. Incident at the what center? The captain responded with a stunned expression. Your crew members Andreas and Cole nearly got into a fight over who would adopt the last Mandarin orphan, the GCPS officer explained. In the end, they agreed to co-parent, so it all worked out. Even if the situation was resolved in the best interests of a child, an altercation requires us to investigate and be sure none of the children will be at risk. This is especially important as your crew has adopted a total of 10 children. Mandarin children seem to be especially compatible with humans, so we doubt there will be any issues, but we still must investigate. Cole and Andreas are co-parenting, but they aren't even in a relationship, nor do they swing that way sexually. Why on earth? The captain started before halting mid-sentence as something finally clicked in his brain. Hang on a second. Did you say something about refugees of war? Yes, the officer stated before going on to clarify. The Mandarins are a new species in the galaxy and have found themselves in a conflict with the Nerlal Collective, a rather aggressive and expansionist entity. The matter has not yet garnered the attention of any of the major galactic alliances, and their location is rather remote and not strategically important. There are doubts that any will intervene. Here is a brief overview of the species and situation. It is quite desperate, with many more Mandarin children in need of adoption. The officer put their credentials away, while bringing up another tentacle with a datapad. Captain Malkovich took one look at the picture at the top, and his brain stalled as it considered the reality of a sentient ferret with 4 arms, 2 legs, and cat-like ears. He then realized his ship was about to become a madhouse, and he didn't have time to childproof anything before the GCPS officer did the inspection. However, that was secondary to addressing the main problem. "Hold on, I need to make a call," he said tersely to the GCPS officer. He quickly pulled out his communicator and selected a contact he hadn't spoken to in years, and hoped the number was still valid. Luckily, it was. "Captain Jackson, it's Captain Malkovich with the hauler Pandora's cargo box. I need your help," he said gravely. "My crew just adopted 10 Mandarin children who are refugees of a war with something called the Nerlal Collective. Evidently, there are a lot of orphans. Do you know if your superiors in the Navy are aware of the situation? And are you still friends with Erica over in the Terran Red Cross?" Less than a week later, the Nerlal Collective discovered humanity was displeased with their treatment of the Mandarin people. First came the Terran Red Cross, who attempted to document the treatment of the Mandarins and provide aid. It turned into an evacuation mission, with ships full of Mandarin orphans being sent to Terran colonies for care and adoption. Next came the Terran Navy, who was all too happy to teach them to pick on an opponent their own size. Initially, the Terran Navy simply watched and warned the Nerlal Collective to cease all war crimes and violations of sapient rights or face serious consequences. When a Red Cross vessel full of Mandarin children was fired upon for attempting to remove Nerlal labor trainees, Terran Fleet Command decided that no less than half of the Terran Navy would provide a proportionate response. In less than a month, the collective was toothless and begging for mercy. Next came the lawyers on behalf of over 5 million human parents, demanding reparations and compensation for their adopted Mandarin children. Upon arrival, the lawyers discovered the Mandarins weren't the first race the collective had mistreated, and the opportunities for class action lawsuits were boundless. Members of the former Nerlal Collective suddenly found themselves destitute and on the run from every collection agent in the known galaxy, if they weren't already in prison for sapient rights abuses. And the galaxy was reminded why you shouldn't mistreat other sapiens if there's any possibility humans will find out, especially if the sapiens are a little furry. End of story.
I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.